Well, I love to fish. Do we have any fishermen out there? Raise your hands. Any fishermen? I love fishing, okay? It's one of my favorite things to do on my day off. But there are also times where maybe I will fish even on a day that's not my day off, because I've got a pond that is about 30 yards from my back door that is stocked with bass. And a lot of times right before dinner, maybe Hope's doing something, I've got a few minutes and I will just walk right down to that pond. And sometimes I've got a pole on my back porch. I keep it there. I'm ready to roll, okay? And I walk down to that pond, and sometimes the very first cast, man, that bass will blow up on that thing and I will reel in. This is one I caught not too long ago. I think we got a picture of that one there. That's a good one, right? And that was one that I caught on the very first cast. First cast, boom, hits the water. I'm like, oh my goodness. I want to tell you right now, that is my kind of fishing. Don't you love it when it's like that? And now here is what you know if you're a fisherman. How many of you know this? It's not like that, okay? But there are a lot of times within the first 5 minutes, I'll catch a couple of bass just like that. And man, I love it whenever fishing is like that. But most of the time, a lot of times it's not. There are some times where I can use the same lure, I can use the same rod and reel, I'm casting in the same place, and I'm talking like I'll go for about 15 minutes and nothing, right? And I'm like, and usually I'm out at that point. I just walk back up and I go eat dinner, okay? But here's the thing, and sometimes it's like that and a lot of times it's not. Now, if you know fishermen, you know that they're good about telling fishing stories, all right? Especially about the one that got away, and it's always bigger and it gets bigger every time, right? That's what we do as fishermen. You also know if you are a fisherman, you know this, that when you take a picture of the fish that you caught, you don't hold it up here, you hold it out here, okay? Every good fisherman knows that. Now look at it, this is a fish that Trinity caught last summer. Isn't that a whopper right there? I was like, all right, Trinity, here's what you gotta do. You gotta hold it out, okay? And now here's another one that she caught on our pond back there, and you see, all right? That's a little perch. It's probably about like that, but it looks bigger. It's the whole size of her torso, right? I mean, that's a big fish that she caught. Now I gotta work with Luke. Luke caught one not too long ago. He was holding it here. I thought, no, you gotta hold it out here. Now I worked with Hope. Hope's got it, all right? Where we got Hope, there she goes. Now that was probably about that big, but it looks big, right? And then last summer, this is one I caught. This one was amazing, okay? That was an awesome fish that I caught, right? But we fishermen are good with fishing stories. And that's always these bigger fish that we talk about. Now, I want us to look in the Bible this morning in the greatest fishing story that I've ever heard and probably you'll ever hear, okay? But as you're turning in your Bibles, have you ever felt discouraged or disappointed maybe about your career? Maybe you don't like the way your job's going. Maybe you don't like your job. Maybe you're just really struggling, and maybe you're in a job that you don't feel like there's a lot of purpose, and maybe it's more just about a paycheck than any kind of purpose, and you just kind of struggle with it. I talk to people all the time that they just are really disappointed and discouraged with their career. Maybe you're just worn out. You put your heart and soul into it, and you work so hard all the time, and a lot of times you don't feel like you have anything to show for it. You ever felt that way? And it's like, man, I give so much. Or maybe it's your marriage. Maybe you've worked really hard at cultivating a good marriage, but you don't feel like your marriage is getting any better, and you're disappointed by that. Or maybe it's just coming out of this last year that was so hard on so many different people, right? And you're struggling with finding kind of a sense of purpose moving forward. Well, the passage we're going to look at today has some really powerful principles that are going to help us in dealing with some of those disappointments. If there's ever a time where you feel like there's emptiness in your life, I want to show you in God's word how Jesus brings fullness into emptiness. How does he do this? Now, no fishing story can match the one that Luke is going to tell about Jesus. Let me give you some context of this passage in Luke chapter 5. This is actually the second miracle that Jesus would perform. The first one was him changing the water into wine, and Jesus didn't yet have disciples that were following him full time. They had been exposed to some of the teachings of Jesus, but they were still getting to know him a little bit. And so Jesus is about to, though, in this second miracle of these fish, he is about to call his very first disciples to follow him and to leave everything and to come with him. Now, Peter and Andrew are brothers, and James and John are brothers, and they have a fishing business together in northern Israel, which is up there on their business was on the Sea of Galilee. It was also called Lake Gennesaret or the Sea of Tiberias. And so it had a few different names, but it was kind of like the Lake Tahoe of Israel. It's beautiful, and it's like that. I look forward to going there someday, all right? But Peter and James and John, they're not yet full-time disciples of Jesus. They're in this business together, and they're trying to make money and take care of their families. And they've been out all night, and they've been fishing all night, giving it their best, but they got skunked. And they didn't catch anything. And man, that's frustrating. It's frustrating when you don't catch anything and you put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into it. But these guys got zero, zilch, nada. They've been working hard. And so you got to know this wasn't recreational fishing for them. This was their livelihood. This is how these guys made money for their families and how they took care of their families. And they're catching nothing. So it has to be a disappointing time. There's emptiness. Right? They were coming up empty and they had worked hard with nothing to show for that. And now here they are. They're tired. They're wanting to go get a nap before they got to go do it all over again, right? You ever feel like that? You just got to rest because they got to go do it all over again. And now they're cleaning their nets, and that's a tedious job. And Jesus comes along. Now, some of you can probably relate to working really hard, but feeling like you don't have anything to show for. Some of you can feel that way. And I know there's been times in our church, I'll be 22 years since we started the church, 22 years in February, and there have been great seasons, but there's also been some down times. And there have been times where I felt like I was working harder and I wasn't seeing any kind of fruit or any kind of progress. And man, it's disappointing. It can become discouraging. You can feel like quitting and giving up. So Jesus comes along. And people are starting to follow Jesus. It's at the very beginning of his ministry, and they've never heard anybody teach like this. And people are crowding around Jesus, and they're wanting to hear what he has to say. So he comes to some empty boats on the shore, and he asks these fishermen if he could get in their boats so that he was going to push out from the shore so he could teach people because they were crowding up against him. And it maybe was a boat that looked kind of like this, okay? About the similar size of this. And one of these boats belonged to Peter. And so Jesus is going to get in. Let's look in verse 3. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, who would become Peter, okay, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat in the boat and he taught the crowds from there. So Jesus engages these fishermen for a couple of reasons. He asked to borrow their boat, number one, so he could put some space between him and the people. They were crowding up. Secondly, the water would amplify his voice, and he understood that because when you speak on ground, it absorbs, but the water was an amplification for his voice, and he knew that, and there were a lot of people that needed to hear him. Now, I had an opportunity back in 2008 to go to India on a mission trip, and we were walking along the shore of the Bay of Bengal, and there were some fishing boats that looked like this, okay? Do we have that one there? There it is, okay. And so we got out in the boat. Now, I wasn't as persuasive as Jesus to just let these guys borrow their boat. I said, can we use your boat? And they said, you can if you pay us. And so we paid them a little bit of money. We went out on the boat, and then I said, when we get up, since I paid for it, I want to get a picture like I'm Jesus preaching, okay? All right? And so these guys kind of thought I was, the difference is there was nobody on the shore who was listening, okay? But we got a picture of that, okay? I got a friend who took a picture of that. But it was a boat that was like that. And that was a cool experience for me to get to be in a fisherman's boat like that. In fact, those guys were tending to their nets at that time. And so again, they didn't want to go back out unless we paid them. And so Jesus comes along, and the third reason he's going to use this is because the owner of the boat, he's going to change his life. He's going to turn his life upside down. And I want you to see what it says in verse 4. When he had finished speaking or preaching, and he's speaking to all these people, he said to Simon, so he not only speaks to the crowds, he speaks to the individual, and he looks at Simon and he says, now let's go out where it's deeper. Let's go out where it's deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Now remember, they've been out all night fishing. They've been trying it their own way. He's a pro fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter. What does he know about fishing, right? They've been trying it their way, nothing, right? Now I gotta tell you, fishermen are prideful. I mean, I hate it whenever I've had a bad day fishing or somebody comes along and I'm still fishing and I haven't caught anything and somebody comes along and they always say this, do any good? No, haven't done any good. This is why fishermen are liars, okay? We begin, oh yeah, it's been great. Or we hate it whenever someone says, well, you ought to do it like this. Oh, that's what I should have done. The lure goes in the water. I didn't know that, okay? All right, and so we're prideful. We struggle with this a little bit. Nobody likes to be told what to do, okay? And so Jesus comes along and he's gonna begin to speak to Peter in a different kind of way. And he's gonna say, are you doing any good? No, it's not working out your way, is it? Well, let's do it my way. Look at verse 5. Master, Simon replied, and you're going to begin to hear the disappointment and a little bit of the reluctance, the hesitancy. Master, we worked hard all last night, and I want you to say this with me, okay? And we didn't catch, say it with me, we didn't catch anything. Zip, zilch, nada. We didn't catch anything. We've been working hard. Our business, we're putting everything into our business and it's not going the way we want it to. We're struggling, Jesus. Our boat's empty. And you can hear some of the discouragement in his voice. Man, we've been working so hard and I don't have anything to show for this right now. And sometimes we give it everything we've got, and some of you can relate to this. And you're working so hard at what you're doing, but you feel empty. You feel like there's emptiness in your boat. There's no fish. We've tried everything. But I want you to see it's not a matter of working hard. You should work hard because I know a lot of you do work hard. But sometimes, let's be real, sometimes it's just that life doesn't turn out even when you work hard. Sometimes because the world's broken, things just don't come together. And so many of us can deal with disappointment and we can begin to get discouraged. And maybe your marriage, you've been working so hard. You've been reading books. You've been going to counseling. You've been doing the right things, but it's like you still can't seem to make progress in the marriage and you're discouraged about this. Well, this miracle has so much to teach us about dealing with emptiness and dealing with discouragement. What do we do? Well, here's what I want you to know. Number one, everybody is fishing for something. What are you fishing for? Some of you are fishing for security. You're just looking for some security in your life and you're trying to find it in a lot of different ways. Some of you are fishing for stability. You're trying to find some stability. Some of you are fishing for significance and you just want to feel like what you're doing matters, like there's some kind of significance to your life and you're actually doing something that's changing lives or being productive or something that you know is an encouraging thing to other people. What are you fishing for? Well, these guys, their encounter with Jesus is going to change their lives forever. Let's continue to look at this. And now listen to Peter's voice. You can tell he's struggling. He says this, well, we've been fishing all night, Lord, but look at what he says. But if you say so, well, I'll let these nets down again. And this time their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. And a shout for help brought their partners in the other boat. And soon, this is incredible, both of their boats were filled with fish on the verge of sinking. That's how much fullness Jesus brings into things. Now, I've been, anybody goes sand bass fishing when you can get in a school of sand bass and that water's just boiling, right? And then if you can get at just the right time, you can catch a fish on every cast. Randy and I, a couple of years ago, we went out and we caught some sand bass. Man, it was like every single cast, okay? And it was so awesome. But I got to tell you, the boat wasn't about to sink from all the fish, was it, Randy? I mean, we caught a lot of fish that day, but the boat wasn't about to sink. And these guys have got 2 boats that are going under. I mean, that's incredible to think of the fullness, right? Now, here's the big takeaway, all right? I want you to catch this today. It's so important. God can accomplish more in a moment of us doing things His way than in a lifetime trying to do it my way. God can do so much in a moment. He can bring fullness into emptiness in a moment. These guys have been fishing all night and they were coming up empty, right? They caught more in that moment with Jesus in the boat with them than they'd probably caught in months, right? And God just does more in a split second than in an entire lifetime of me trying to do it my way, me trying to be, have my own ingenuity and being clever and trying to do it all my way. And this is what I want you to see. Jesus can turn this emptiness and all this strife, he can turn it into fullness when we do things his way. And for some of you, this truth is going to be an encouragement for you because you're discouraged today. Maybe your business isn't going the way that you hoped that it would go. And I want you to know that the Lord can change things in a moment when we begin to yield everything. Now, I'm not saying you're going to turn into a millionaire or anything like that automatically. But what I'm saying is God, when he's involved in the equation, can do more in our lives, more in our families, more in our jobs, in our marriages. God can do more in our church, right? And we want to see that when we yield it all to him. He is a God who is all about renewal. He's a God about transforming emptiness into fullness. And Jesus told these guys later on, they'd been following him for 3 years. This was the night before his crucifixion. And he's going to tell them in John chapter 15, he said, look, I'm going to make you fishers of men. And and we're going to read about that in a second. But he says, this is how you're going to have just this productive kind of life is when you stay within me, you stay connected to me. Look at what he says in John chapter 15, remain in me. That means abide, live within me, dwell within me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. You got to stay in me, Jesus says. Yes, I'm the vine. You are the branches. And those who remain in me and I in them, I want you to say it with me. What will they do? Produce much fruit. Come on, say it with me. They will produce much fruit. For apart, say it with me. For apart from me, you can do nada. The boat's going to come up empty. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're apart from the Lord in this and you're trying it your way and you're forcing it your way. So again, such a powerful story of Peter with Jesus here, and we'll read the rest of it in just a moment. But how do you begin to go from emptiness to fullness? If you're taking some notes, write this down. Number one, I want you to see this. We got to give Jesus control of my boat. We got to give him control of our boats. To where we say, Lord, this is where it all starts. You got to get Jesus in your boat, number one, right? Okay. We want him in the boat. And I think that starts with our life as a whole. If you've never put your faith in Christ, you want Jesus in the boat of your life by faith, calling upon him to save you. And here's the other part of this though. This is about beginning to submit to him as being Lord in your life. All right. And you releasing control and instead of compartmentalizing your life where here's my job, here's my Christianity, here's my family. Now what you're going to say is, I want you in control of all of that. I'm going to yield control of all of those things to you. I want you in every area of my life, Lord. So let that translate into whatever area where you're experiencing maybe some emptiness right now. Maybe it's in your business. And you've kind of kept your business separated from your faith and separated from Christianity, or maybe in your marriage or your parenting. There are some of you that you're going to be getting married before long. And I want to tell you, as somebody who's been married for 28 years, you better be sure Jesus is in your boat. You better be sure that he's in control of your boat. And I plead with you to allow him to control it from the beginning. To be sure that he's in control. Some of you, you're going to be starting a new career or a new job, and maybe you used to do it your way. What I want to say to you today in this message is, let Jesus have control of your boat from the very beginning. Some of you are in college and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do next. Let Jesus have control of the boat right now. Don't wait till you get in your career. Let him have control of the boat right now. We need Jesus in control of the boat in order to have the blessing the way that Peter had the blessing. So think about these fishermen. I want you to think about this, okay? It was the same lake, the same boat, it was the same nets, only difference was what? They gave control over to Jesus. They said, Lord, I want you to control this. Lord, I want you not only in the boat, and it's one thing to have Jesus in your boat, okay? You want him in the boat of your life there. But Peter not only allowed him in the boat, he said, now I yield control. We're going to do it your way, Lord. So here's what you need to ask. What is your boat? What is your boat today? Where's the area where you're coming up empty and you're struggling and maybe you're coming up short and you're working hard but nothing to show? For some of you, this is going to change this year. Because instead of maybe just this time where you're trying to control it, a lot of times we don't want the Lord in our jobs, right? Maybe we're afraid of what people might think of us. And so we just kind of do things our way. And then we come to church on Sunday or we watch online and then we leave our Christianity at church and we don't live it out. We compartmentalize this. And so listen, I'm not talking about salvation. If you need to get saved, you need to do that today. What I'm talking about is for those of us who you do know Christ is your Savior, but you've been holding back from the Lord on certain areas of your life, and you keep finding out that you're coming up empty. In a lot of these areas, this was about total obedience and again, coming to the Lord and saying, Lord, I want to worship you as much on Monday through Friday as I worship you on Sunday. I want to see you first place in my business, first place in my family, the way I interact with my wife, the way I talk with my kids or my husband or whatever. And so this is moving beyond being a casual kind of Christian, maybe a Christian really just more in name than by behavior. And here's what we have felt as your pastors, just a strong urgency from the Lord to do with you this year. It is to take you into deeper places of discipleship, for us to become more like Jesus. And yeah, you can clap about that. That's great. Okay. But here's what Jesus is saying to many of you today and to me as well. I want you to push your boat out into deeper waters with me this year. I want you to go beyond where you have been. I want to take you into some places and here's the reason. I want to take you into some places because in the deep water, that's where the bigger fish are. And in the deep water, that's where the productivity is. There's power there. There's fullness to experience Jesus in a deeper way than just a Sunday morning experience one time in a worship service. He wants to be in every part of your life. So let me ask you something. Are you willing to let Jesus use your boat, which that could be your job, your business, your career, whatever that is? Are you willing to let Jesus use your boat as a platform for his gospel? Because that's exactly what Jesus did with Peter. He used Peter's boat to proclaim the kingdom of God and the goodness of God. Are you willing to dedicate this morning, if you haven't, your entire boat for his use? Will you give him your career? Are you willing to give him your business? Are you willing to give him your marriage? And say, Lord, I want you first place. I want you to have the whole boat, not just a part of the boat. I want you to have it all. And when Peter did this, he got blessed with a blessing that he never could have imagined within his mind. And I want you to know that it was well beyond a financial blessing that Peter experienced. That's just temporary, right? There was a life-changing experience that Peter experienced in his life, and it took him from disappointment to this great place of fulfillment in life. Right? But listen, you got to have the disappointments before you can appreciate the good places. And so some of you, you're in the disappointing place right now. Don't despise the disappointments. Let's let God use these things within your life. Let me also ask you this. What area of your life do you want God to bless? You say, well, all of it. Are you willing to give him all of your life, every part? I want him to bless my marriage. Are you willing to put him first in your marriage? I want him to bless my day. Are you willing to give him the first part and the best part of your day? I want him to bless my week. Are you willing to consistently give him the first part of your week on that first day where we worship together? And you do that consistently, whether it's here or online, you're giving him the first. I want him to bless my finances. Are you willing to give him the first 10% of your income, which is a tithe? And that's saying in faith, God, I trust you. I want you to have the entirety of my boat. And God blesses whenever he is in control of your boat. Now, one thing that we have said is a huge part of our church's vision, and I said this in the first week of this year, we want to be more about go and be and less about just come and see. We want to be about sending you out, okay? And you going out and you being not just someone that comes and participates for an hour and 15 minutes, but you go out, you're living on mission every single day in whatever job you're in. That is your platform for the gospel, right? Whatever it is, you need to understand something, that you are a missionary. Every one of you are missionaries. That's not just for a certain group of people that go over to Africa, okay? You are a missionary when you walk out the store. You are a marketplace missionary, a representation of Jesus Christ. We want to be more about less about come and see, more about go and be. You be Jesus to people everywhere where you are going. And this is what we do. We say, and Peter said, Lord, I want you to have the whole boat. Use my life, my business, my family, use my skills, use my talents. I went to the doctor a couple of months ago, and I was at the doctor's office, and I was there with one of the guys who's in our church. His name's Barrett Lane, and Barrett has given medical care for me in a certain area, and I was visiting with him. And as we were visiting, he said, Bart, I want to tell you something. He said, you did a message a few years ago that has kind of changed the way that I view my job. I used to just see my job as a way to make money. It was a way to make money for my family. And he said, I like my job, but he said, you said something that day about how what I do, and it doesn't always have to be a ministry within the church, but what I do is our greatest ministry. Where I'm at every single day. When I wake up, he said, now I go with a new sense of purpose. And my purpose on that day, my purpose is to show people what Jesus looks like by the way I give them medical care. To show people what Jesus looks like by the way I interact with my coworkers, by the way that I talk. And he said, that has given me such a sense of purpose. And folks, when Barrett told me that, I was listening to him and I was just sitting there and my heart was so filled with joy because we've been saying this is an aircraft carrier church, right? We're not a consumer church. It's not a cruise liner. We're an aircraft carrier. We send you out to go live on mission. You come in, you get some fuel, you get patched up where you need maintenance, but most of the time you're out living on mission. And this is what the mission is. You ready? Here's what it is. Love God, love people, and develop disciples. That's my personal mission statement, and that is the mission statement of our church. Now, we're not changing what we do. We're just simplifying the way we say this. We are to love God, love people, develop disciples. I love God when I spend time with him every single day. I love God when I worship with you corporately, right? I love God when I give my very best to the Lord and I'm generous with other people. I love people whenever I'm serving other people, and I can love God by serving people. I love people whenever I'm being a blessing to them and I'm in a life group with them. We develop disciples, right? We're to be about making other people disciples and developing them and helping them come along in our faith. And that is the new mission statement of our church. You're going to be seeing it everywhere. Now, along with that, I want to unveil this to you. We also are going to be, we've developed a brand new website and a brand new logo that you're going to be seeing all over the place. And here's what the website is. It's eaglesview.church. So I urge you to go check that out today. Go see the new website. And this is what and here's the new logo, okay? The new logo you're going to see. Now, let me explain the logo just a little bit to you. You see how there's these different components that are kind of connected together and overlapping? I want you to think about that passage in Peter where it says that we are living stones, and a house is made up of different elements coming together, making up one single unit. But I want you to see, what are we about? Sending you out. We're about sending you out. And we do this, many different people making up one unit. We're sending you out. We do this in the way that we partner with other churches. Do you guys realize this? We are supporting 17 church plants right now. Right now, that's what your church is doing this year. And we're all partnering together for the gospel. Right? For the gospel. One of our fellow pastors who's utilizing this building, Vantage Point, he's in quarantine. He texted me last night. He said, can you preach for Vantage Point tomorrow night? And I'm like, if I'm still living by the end of the day, I will be, brother, right? But what I'm wanting you to see is we're in this together. We're in it together, right? And so we are sending you out. If you're a teacher, you're a missionary. You're a missionary in the way that you love those kids and love those parents. If you're a dentist, you're a missionary in the way that you're taking care of your patients. A businessman, you're a missionary. If you're a stay-at-home mom, you are a missionary to those kids that the Lord has entrusted to you. A police officer, you're a missionary as you protect and serve our community. An accountant, as you work with numbers, do it to the best of your ability to glorify God, right? A realtor, a truck driver, when you're out, you are going all over the nation vocation as a missionary for Jesus, a nurse, a CEO, whatever you do, that is your boat. You get that? Amen, right? That's your boat. And that's what you're to do. So what do I do, Bart? Love God, love people, develop disciples. That's what your mission is. That's what your purpose is. Now, I know some of you are going through a rough time right now because you hate your job. That's one of the things probably as a pastor I hear, maybe more than anything. I hate my job. I hate what I do. It's very common for people to despise that. And sometimes you might need to change boats. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. God may lead you to do that. But I also want you to hear this. There's sometimes that it's not possible to change boats. And you've got to make a decision. Either you are going to continue while you are still in that place and God maybe doesn't allow you to change yet. You might get to. You can either continue to be miserable, you can continue to complain, you can not shine very brightly for the Lord, or you can decide, you know what, I don't like my job, but I got a bigger purpose than just a paycheck. My purpose is to show people what Jesus is like every single day and to be not only just a fisher, for fish, but a fisher of people that we're going to read about as we close this up. I'm meeting with a friend of mine named Ben. We meet every week for discipleship, and we're helping each other get better. And one of the things that I love about Ben is in his job. He's in the blinds business, okay? And he sells blinds and he installs blinds for people. But Ben views his job as his ministry. And we were talking one day and he said, Bart, I've started just really viewing this right now as my best way just to show people Jesus. He said, people invite me into their homes, and he said, fortunately, I work for a Christian boss. And he said, I don't do this every single time, but he said, whenever I'm talking with people, I just listen to them. And I listen to them, and I'm certainly there to do my job, and I'm going to do my very best. But he said, a lot of times, people end up sharing more with me than probably what they intended. He said, for whatever reason, and I hear hurt, I hear brokenness, I hear struggles. And he said, there's so many times where I just say, hey, before I do these blinds for you, could I just pray for you? And he said, I've never had a single person turn me down. And he said, I just pray for him. And then another time, Ben was saying, I've got another coworker that I'm working with. And as I'm working with him, I'm trying to just show him what Jesus looks like. I'm trying to live this out every single day. And Ben texted me one day and he said, man, I got to tell you, or he called me. He said, I got to tell you about what happened with my friend, my coworker. He just asked me one day, what's up with you? And he said, I felt like it was the right moment for me to share why I have a difference in my life. And Ben said, I shared Jesus with him that day, and he gave his life to Jesus Christ. Folks, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your boat. That is your platform and it's not being obnoxious and just, I'm not calling you to be a street preacher. I'm just saying, you are going to be able to reach more people for Jesus as we send you out, as you live on mission, love God, love people, develop disciples every single day. Whatever it is you're doing, you get up, you give your boat to Jesus every day, and you say, Lord, I want you to bring fullness into this boat today. I want you to use it your way. Now let's look at these last two things quickly, okay? As you give Jesus control of your boat, look at what he says. Master Simon replied, we worked hard all night. We didn't catch a thing, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. All right, if you say so, right? Do you know what Peter was doing here? He's admitting that his way wasn't working. And this is hard and Peter was known to be prideful. All right, some of you, maybe you're pretty prideful about the way you do things, right? Peter was a pro. Jesus was a carpenter. What does he know, right? But he had to admit, this didn't work. Man, I've been giving it my best. I've tried so hard, right? And his identity was probably tied to his job. For Peter not to catch fish was like LeBron going an entire game without scoring a basket. It just wasn't working. And here's the thing. You can still be really good at what you're doing, but what do we all know? There are outside factors that you cannot control. We can't control the economy right now. We can't control what's happening politically in our nation. You can't control, right, the virus that's running amok. We don't have control over this. Peter didn't have control over the fish. But here's what this shows us. Jesus is master over even those things we cannot control. He's master even over the fish. Why do we not want to ask Jesus to take control of our boat? Here's 3 reasons. We're prideful. we're stubborn, and we're fearful. We're prideful, we're stubborn, and we're fearful. So what does the Lord want from us in this today, okay? We're prideful because it's hard to admit your way's not working. We're stubborn because we don't like to change, and we don't like to move into doing things that are uncomfortable for us. A lot of churches this year are going to struggle because they're not willing, because of their stubbornness, to adapt some of the ways that they're doing things. That's what happens with a lot of churches. They end up dying out because they don't change their methods without compromising the mission and the message. They don't change their methods, and so they end up dying. And then a lot of us, we're fearful. We're afraid of change, or we're afraid of what others might think of us. So what does the Lord want? He wants this. He wants humility. He wants you to say, Lord, my way isn't working. I'm going to let go of my pride. He wants teachability. This is where this stubbornness, where I'm stuck in my old ways. And those of us who are older, this is harder. Lord, I'm going to try some new ways. I'm going to try to do it your way, right? And he wants faith over our fear. He wants us to trust him. Here's the final thing right here. Here, if you want to go from emptiness to fullness, we got to be willing to do whatever Jesus tells us to do. And sometimes it's not going to make sense. It did not make sense to Peter for them to push back out into the water. We already did that. But if you say so, Lord. Peter was a but if you say so, Lord person. I want to ask you today, what about you? Because here's what I know. To go from emptiness to fullness, you have to do some things that don't make sense to you. But that's where your faith comes in. I'm going to trust you, God. I don't understand why you want me to give my first and best to you. Doesn't make sense whenever I'm struggling. Doesn't make sense to do that. I don't understand why you want me to do this. Some of you, it's not going to make sense that he may be calling some of you to lay your nets down and to follow him in a different kind of way. Some of you, he may be calling you to be a pastor. Some of you, he may be calling you to plant a church and say, I don't know how to do that. Don't be afraid, he says. You follow me. Some of you, he's calling, but most of you, he's not calling to do that. What he's calling you to do is to have him in your boat, give him control, and whatever you're doing right now, you shine brightly for Jesus. Wherever you're planted right now, shine brightly. Look at the end of the verse here. When Simon Peter realized what happened, he saw the fish, he saw the miracle, he fell to his knees before Jesus, and he said this, oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man. He didn't feel worthy. He didn't feel like he could do this, right? And here's what I want you to see. Jesus didn't see him for his flaws. He saw him for who he could be, and he sees you the same way, right? And he wants to use you, and he wants to take the brokenness in your life and use it. And it says, for he was awestruck by the number of fish they had caught, as were the others with him. His partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. And Jesus replied to Simon, don't be afraid. And he's saying that to some of you, that it's not making sense what he's calling you to do. Don't be afraid. From now on, Peter, from now on, Christian, you're going to be fishing for people. I'm giving you a bigger purpose, and it goes beyond a paycheck. I'm giving you a bigger purpose. And as soon as they landed, these guys left everything and followed Jesus. I want to ask you, are you willing to leave everything to follow Jesus if he calls you? Are you willing to do that? To do what, Bart? Love God, love people, develop disciples.